Section 8 of The Wood Beyond the World. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Corey Samuel. The Wood Beyond the World by William Morris. Chapter 22 of The Dwarf and the Pardon. Now she began to say, My friend, now shall I tell thee what I have done for thee and me, and if thou have a mind to blame me, and punish me, yet remember first, that what I have done has been for thee and our hope of happy life. Well, I shall tell thee. But therewithal her speech failed her, and springing up, she faced the bent and pointed with her finger, and she all deadly pale, and shaking so that she might scarce stand, and might speak no word, though a feeble gibbering came from her mouth. Walter leapt up, and put his arm about her, and looked whitherward she pointed, and at first saw nought, and then nought but a brown and yellow rock rolling down the bent, and then at last he saw that it was the evil thing which had met him when first he came into that land, and now it stood upright, and he could see that it was clad in a coat of yellow samite. Then Walter stooped down, and gat his bow into his hand, and stood before the maid while he nocked an arrow. But the monster made ready his tackle, while Walter was stooping down, and or ever he could loose, his bowstring twanged, and an arrow flew forth, and grazed the maid's arm above the elbow, so that the blood ran, and the dwarf gave forth a harsh and horrible cry. Then flew Walter's shaft, and true was it aimed, so that it smote the monster full on the breast, but fell down from him, as if he were made of stone. Then the creature set up his horrible cry again, and loosed withal, and Walter deemed that he had smitten the maid, for she fell down in a heap behind him. Then waxed Walter wood wroth, and cast down his bow and drew his sword, and strode forward towards the bent against the dwarf. But he roared out again, and there were words in his roar, and he said, Fool, thou shalt go free if thou wilt give up the enemy. And who, said Walter, is the enemy? Yelled the dwarf, She, the pink and white thing lying there, she is not dead yet, she is but dying for fear of me. Yea, she hath reason. I could have set the shaft in her heart as easily as scratching her arm, but I need her body alive, that I may wreak me on her. What wilt thou do with her? Said Walter. For now he had heard that the maid was not slain, he had waxed wary again, and stood watching his chance. The dwarf yelled so at his last word that no word came from the noise a while, and then he said, What will I with her? Let me at her, and stand by and look on, and then shalt thou have a strange tale to carry off with thee, for I will let thee go this while. Said Walter, But what need to wreak thee? What hath she done to thee? What need? What need? Roared the dwarf. Have I not told thee that she is the enemy? And thou askest of what she hath done. Of what? Fool, she is the murderer. She hath slain the lady that was our lady, and that made us, she whom we all worshipped and adored. O impudent fool! Therewith he knocked and loosed another arrow, which would have smitten Walter in the face, but that he lowered his head in the very nick of time. Then, with a great shout, he rushed up the bent, and was on the dwarf before he could get his sword out, and leaping aloft, dealt the creature a stroke amidmost of the crown, and so mightily he smote, that he drave the heavy sword right through to the teeth, so that he fell dead straightway. Walter stood over him a minute, and when he saw that he moved not, he went slowly down to the stream, whereby the maid yet lay, cowering down and quivering all over, and covering her face with her hands. Then he took her by the wrist, and said, "Up, maiden, up, and tell me this tale of the slaying." But she shrunk away from him, and looked at him with wild eyes, and said, "What hast thou done with him? Is he gone?" "He is dead," said Walter. "I have slain him. There lies he with cloven skull on the bent side, unless, forsooth, he vanish away like the lion I slew, or else, perchance, he will come to life again. And art thou a lie, like to the rest of them? Let me hear of this slaying." She rose up, and stood before him trembling, and said, "O, thou art angry with me, and thine anger I cannot bear. Ah, what have I done? Thou hast slain one, and I maybe the other, and never had we escaped till both these twain were dead. Ah, thou dost not know, thou dost not know! O me, what shall I do to appease thy wrath?" He looked on her, and his heart rose to his mouth at the thought of sundering from her. Still he looked on her, and her piteous friendly face melted all his heart. He threw down his sword, and took her by the shoulders, and kissed her face over and over, and strained her to him, so that he felt the sweetness of her bosom. Then he lifted her up like a child, and set her down on the green grass, and went down to the water, and filled his hat therefrom, and came back to her. Then he gave her to drink, and bathed her face and her hands, so that the colour came aback to the cheeks and lips of her. And she smiled on him, and kissed his hands, and said, "O, now thou art kind to me." "Yea," said he, "and true it is that if thou hast slain, I have done no less, and if thou hast lied, even so have I. And if thou hast played the wanton, as I deem not that thou hast, I full surely have so done. So now thou shalt pardon me, and when thy spirit is come back to thee, thou shalt tell me thy tale in all friendship, and in all loving kindness will I hearken the same." Therewith he knelt before her, and kissed her feet. But she said, "Yea, yea, what thou willest, that will I do. But first tell me one thing. Hast thou buried this horror, and hidden him in the earth?" He deemed that fear had bewildered her, and that she scarcely yet knew how things had gone. But he said, "Fair sweet friend, I have not done it as yet, but now will I go and do it, if it seem good to thee." "Yea," she said, "but first must thou smite off his head, and lie it by his buttocks when he is in the earth, or evil things will happen else. This of the burying is no idle matter, I bid thee believe." "I doubt it not," said he. "Surely such malice as was in this one will be hard to slay." And he picked up his sword, and turned to go to the field of deed. She said, "I must needs go with thee. Terror hath so filled my soul that I durst not abide here without thee." So they went both together to where the creature lay. The Maid durst not look on the dead monster, but Walter noted that he was girt with a big ungainly sax, so he drew it from the sheath, and there smote off the hideous head of the fiend with his own weapon. Then they twain together laboured the earth, she with Walter's sword, he with the ugly sax, till they had made a grave deep and wide enough, and therein they thrust the creature, and covered him up, weapons and all together. CHAPTER 23. Of the peaceful ending of that wild day. Thereafter Walter led the Maid down again, and said to her, "Now, sweetling, shall the story be told." "Nay, friend," she said, "not here. This place hath been polluted by my craven fear, and the horror of the vile wretch, of whom no words may tell his vileness. Let us hence and onward. Thou seest I have once